We're hosting this session with our second Sustainable Transport Award honorable mention recipient, City of Peshawar, Pakistan. We're excited to share the insights from the city's experience today, from the process of implementing its gold standard BRT, first on the Indian Peninsula, also highlighting its inclusive goals around gender, persons with disabilities, as well as the informal transport operators. And more details will be covered in a case study available at the time of replay for download for everyone to access and learn more about this amazing experience. Today's session will include 4 more presentations from the city and a moderated discussion, followed by a brief Q&A with the audience. So I am very happy to introduce to you today's panel, starting with the session moderator, Aimee Gauthier, who is ITDP's Chief Knowledge Officer. And Aimee has been working on all things public transport related, including gender and inclusivity lens. Our first panelist is Fayaz Khan, who is the CEO of Trans Peshawar, the agency operating Zoo Peshawar Bus Rapid Transport. Fayaz will give us a brief context on Peshawar public transport. We'll also watch a very exciting video, and he will also talk about key goals of the BRT project. The second panelist is Mohammed Imran Khan, General Manager for the Operation and Market Development at Trans Peshawar. Imran will go into more detail on implementation of the BRT, including the bus restructuring program, and some of the technical aspects of the system. So I welcome you all to the panel, and I'll invite Aimee to open up the session for us.
Great. I'm really excited to be here. Welcome, everyone. I think this deep dive on the work that's been done in Peshawar, Pakistan is really inspirational and super relevant. They took a really unique approach to how they designed the projects. They made it resilient, they made it inclusive, they made it integrated, and these are all really important things for the world that we live in and the world that's coming for us with climate change, grounding it in mass transit, which is so important for the sustainability and equity of our city. So I think this story is amazing. The Sustainable Transport Award for me is one of my favorite things. Just generally, like, I think it's amazing to be able to celebrate what cities have accomplished. And I think we really need to celebrate getting something done. It's so hard. And so for cities that actually have the courage and the fortitude to get a project over the finish line, we really need to celebrate. But not only that, I think, again, Peshawar is an exemplar, an outstanding example for cities everywhere. And so there's 2 pieces to the Sustainable Transport Award. There's the celebration. So Peshawar is the 2022 honorable mention. And then we also have the learning piece of it. And that's why I think this session will be really amazing, is we're going to hear from the city about what they did, their lessons learned, the challenges they faced, and the successes that they had. So I'm very excited for this. Walter Hook was in Peshawar a couple of months ago, and he wrote to us just really briefly saying that he was riding the BRT system and he just saw happy, smiling people everywhere. And I think that that's the goal. That's a beautiful sentiment. And so I think it's really great. Really excited. And so with that, I will pass to Fayaz Khan, the CEO of Trans Peshawar. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Aimee. First of all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the participants to be here. I am Fayaz Khan, CEO of Trans Peshawar, and Trans Peshawar is very glad to be invited to this transport summit, the Mobilized Transport Summit. First of all, before I begin, I want to thank the ITDP and the Sustainable Transport Award Committee for recognizing our efforts. And I also want to say that such recognition, this creates a source of competition and a source of competition for betterment, for contributing to the society. So I think these kinds of events and celebrations are very encouragement for us and for rest of the systems. So before we start, Iona, if you can share a brief video of the system so everyone can see it, how the system works, and it will. Iona, if you can open the presentation, I think the video looks like it's stopped. So.
Yes, I'll pull up your presentation right now. 1 second. It should be visible now.
Yeah. So thank you again, everyone. And basically today we are sharing with you the successes that we have made in Peshawar BRT, the challenges that we faced, and basically share our lesson learned so that other systems can also benefit from the lesson that we have learned and how we overcome these. Next, please. Next slide, yes. So Peshawar Sustainable BRT project is basically not just running BRT or buses from one end to the other end. The main aim of the project was basically developing a sustainable urban transport system, and this vision was in line with the Government of Pakistan Vision 2025, the framework for economic growth. Because it's always important that what projects are being done, they have the legal backing and they are in line with the vision of the bigger governments. Some of the key outputs of the constructing a resilient infrastructure in an integrated manner, that all transport modes, should it be bicycles, the walking, other vehicles, the other transport hubs, that they are integrated with each other. That is very important. Then another important and key aspect is capacity building. The people who run the system and institutions who run and follow the system, they need to have the capacity, the right knowledge, the right people. So that was another key output of this project. And lastly, transit-oriented developments, basically to go more greener, to have dense developments, go vertically and avoid urban sprawls. Next, please. Trans-Peshawar, the company who is responsible for operating the BRT system, right from the onset, our vision was to provide a safe, efficient, inclusive and environmentally friendly transport system. And that we have done by making the system 100% universally accessible, and we are proud for that in Pakistan, this is the only and first system in all sorts of project that is 100% universally accessible. Should it be the offices, should it be the buses, the stops, the depots, every facility is universal accessible. And universal accessible is not only looking at the people with disabilities, but to make it universal accessible for the children, for the females, for the other vulnerable groups who had not access to such kind of facility before. And then efficiency, we have built in efficiency by including key performance indicators right in our service contract so that the system is efficient and reliable. Because if you provide a reliable and affordable and efficient system, then definitely it will attract people and the people will come for it. Safety is another key important factor, and we included safety not only right from the design and planning stage, but right during the operations, and we continuously do trainings for all kind of staff to deal with the different people, such as elderly people, how to deal with children. We are having different programs with different organizations, how to handle the different people and how to make the system more safe. And then most importantly is the environment. And we are the first system, and we are proud to say that in Pakistan, we are the first to break the status quo of the diesel buses. We are the first to bring diesel hybrid buses to Pakistan. And then we have set now the baseline, and the other system definitely has to match us, or they have to go for a more greener mode. And then of course, the non-motorized traffic, we are giving due attention to it, and we are focusing on pedestrianization and bicycle sharing system and bicycling. Next, please. Some of the key features of our name of the system is Ju Peshawar, and that means it's a local language. It means let's go Peshawar. It's a third generation BRT. That means that the off-corridor routes are directly integrated into the system, so there is no transfer required. Some of the physical features, 27 kilometers of end-to-end fully dedicated corridor with no kind of any crossing, 30 state-of-the-art stations spaced at about 800 to 900 meters. So based on international standards, all the stations are within the walking distance of 400 meters, 244 diesel hybrid electric buses. We have 3 commercial buildings, 2 depots at both ends, a staging facility at the center, so that in the off-peak, the buses can park there to avoid dead mileage, and then some commercial and park and ride facility to have some non-fare revenue. At the moment, we are running 10 routes, and in the next few months, we are going to expand this to 15 routes. We are offering 360 bicycle under the bicycle sharing system. Next, please. Just to show you, and I think the photos tells the story what was before. Basically, you can see on your left the type of the buses that were used to be prior to the BRT, and it was impossible for a female, for a small children, for any elderly to reach this bus and to access this bus. Then you can see the type of the congestion in the peak hours that people, should it be the normal cars or they are in the buses, they will stuck in the traffic in the peak hours, and their journey was not reliable. Similarly, on the right side of the photo, you can see there was no infrastructure. There was no shades available. There was no protection available for the rain, because it's a hot region to protect from the sun. And the average speed before the BRT was about 10 kilometers per hour. So it was not a good system. The buses were 40 plus years old, highly emission from the buses, and these were not safe and not environmentally friendly. If you go to the next slide, Ivana, please. So basically, we transformed the urban system of the Peshawar, and you can see from the photos that right now we are moving. We will give you further details later on. but over 260,000 people on an average day we are traveling, and they can very safely and reliably reach to their destination. So far in the last less than 2 years, we have carried 91 million passengers, and we are proud to say that there was zero injury, no accident till date. Then another important point was the females and the vulnerable and the children. You can see the photos on the middle and on the right side that children of kindergarten, small children, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, they use our Peshawar BRT system without the support, without accompanying adults, without their parents, and they can safely use. So this was basically a major change for the Peshawar BRT, which bring in the city of Peshawar. Next, please. Then again, we are proud to say that we are the first bicycle sharing system of Pakistan was introduced as part of the Peshawar BRT, where we are providing 360 gender inclusive bikes. We are running bike rallies, we are encouraging people, and we are very pleased to say that there is a huge increase from the start to now in the number of trips, especially the students who are using this facility, and it promotes more and more green environment. There are 32 stations and 560 docks available in the University of Peshawar, which is mainly a residential area of students, and they get education there, and in a Hayatabad area. Next, please. Then social inclusion, like one of the key lessons learned from the success of Peshawar BRT is basically targeting the people, because like the people who were, as you have seen the photos, the people who were using those buses when they get new air-conditioned buses, definitely these people were supposed to come to our system. But our target right from the start, from the planning stage, was how to attract the people who are not using the BRT and how to attract the passenger from the personal cars. And that we have done by listening to them. We will explain in our next presentation. We involved them during the planning stage, and we are providing them the routes and the operational plan based on their demands. So we are able to attract the females, we are able to attract children, we are able to attract the working class female, the disabled who were never able to before use a public transport. They had to go on special taxis, which are also not available in Pakistan. And then again, a very important factor is the transgender. We are the first system in Pakistan that we have provided priority seating for the transgender, because no one was allowing them in the public transport, and they were harassed and they had a lot of challenges. So our system is basically a BRT for all, and we are not leaving behind anyone. Next. Then again, it's community collaboration. We are working with the community. We want to provide back to the community and participate in the different events. Like we are working with the health department. Polio is a very like a bad disease in Pakistan. There is still some polio cases. So we work with the health department, and we work with them to have polio vaccine center at our stations to aware the people, because a lot of female and children use our system. So we are making awareness. We celebrate events because there is no other place in Peshawar. There are no parks or no places for families. So on Independence Day and such other events, we invite the people to come have fun, play, provide some small gifts to the kids. Then the breast awareness campaigns we are doing, food nutrition programs we are doing, the COVID vaccine programs we are doing at our stations. And finally, the plantation, we are focusing a lot on the plantation. So far, we have planted 5,000 trees in Peshawar BRT system, which of course, although not our mandate, but we want to make it more greener. And because of these community collaboration, we have a lot of support from every kind of the resident of the Peshawar. And that's the reason everyone is supporting our project, and they are having confidence in the system, and they trust the system. And that's the key success behind our huge ridership numbers. Next, please. There are, of course, some project benefits, direct benefits to the environment, and then the city benefits. I already touched on some of these, that we are promoting cycling, micro mobility, Definitely a clean technology is part of our system. Bus industry restructuring program, we have done a very successful program, and Imran, my next colleague, will present in more details. And we have a direct environmental impacts of reduction of 31,000 tons of greenhouse gas, reduction in the greenhouse gases. Then the overall benefit to the city, it's an equitable transport mode for all kind of people are using the system. It's not just the people from the buses, but people from the cars are using, and that's our success story behind the BRT. Reduction in the accident, as I mentioned, 91 million people with zero injury. And then there are huge vehicle operating and travel time savings, as we have reduced the number of vehicles on the roads. And along the corridor, there is a huge impact on the vertical development. In the initial days, the people were against the project, but now everyone wants to be closer to the station, to the access, because they now understand the benefits and the benefits of this project and the accessibility that it has provided to the people. Next, please. Thank you, everyone. And my next colleague will, I think, present the other part of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Faiz, and I'll invite Imran for his presentation. We'll just have to go back to the beginning, few slides.
Yes, please. Okay, thank you very much. My name is Muhammad Imran Khan, and I am GM Operation Trans-Peshawar. In this presentation, I will explain implementation process toward building out accessible and inclusive public transport for all. In this brief presentation, I will explain about measure for design, BUB industry restructuring program, integration, and then about the lesson learned during this whole implementation process. Just to summarize that we have multiple components in this projects, and each and every component has their own lesson learned and a lot of things to explain for the world to follow. But the time is short, so I will briefly touch the main areas for the listener to understand and follow those principles in their projects in future. Okay, so the aiming for the gold standard start with the operational design. I will go more a little bit in technical details. So the process start with the operational design. We engage a consultant who has expertise in the design of such mass transit system. So we aim for the gold BRT standard, and we set a standard that we should be the urban leader in providing inclusive public transport for all, and to maximize the economic, social, and economic benefits of the project. So in the next phase, what we did, that we outsourced the construction part to a government department with certain key performance indicator. It was like informal contract in which we specify that we are going to make a gold BRT standard, and you have to construct the BRT project under a certain standard which are identified in the gold standard. So we follow up with them during the monitoring and the implementation process. Then we kept certain aspects of the project with us, like we were mainly involved Trans-Peshawar in procurement of buses, IT equipment, operation and maintenance, and bus industry restructuring program, and the service part of the whole operation that was kept under Trans-Peshawar scope, and we monitor the implementation of the construction through another government agency. The whole process starts with a holistic approach. We should not look only to the one aspect and then start implementing the project. So the first point was to make a gold standard BRT with the planning feature the same as identified in the gold standard. Then when we we talk about the gold standard, when we talk about the international practices, then a next important thing comes in the mind, that should the current system will be able to understand those challenges or not. So for that, it was very important that we do institutional development in parallel. So the government of KP established Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Urban Mobility Authority for the planning for a policy and planning process. At the same time, Trans-Peshawar was developed to operate and maintain the system in accordance with the international standard practices. Similarly, we did not left anyone alone. With this process, we understand that bus industry restructuring program where the existing operator will be affected. So how we need to include them in the system, in the new system, so that because the whole objective or the whole aim was to benefit more the vulnerable groups. So existing industry restructuring program was made part of the project to accommodate those vulnerable and the existing operators. Then integration was the main part, which I will explain in following slide. But we consider integration is a main aspect of this project. Then what we did during this process, then we keep the public and the city informed about, in the stakeholder informed about our projects or success or goals and all these things. So we keep marketing and awareness parallel with during the implementation process. Then we did stakeholder inclusion. We identified the stakeholders. We made them continuously part of the project during the implementation process. Then when we do all these things, then our contracting model should be aligned with all these parameters. That should our contract be in such a form that we have more flexibility in the future to foresee the challenges, and we can then operate the system that it is a more resilience, that it has more flexibility. So we prepare our contract based on international best practices. Then gender action plan was made part of this whole holistic process. When we talk about these features, then it lead us to the urban leader. So it is not just we concentrate only on one aspect of the project, or rather we include many aspects. These are just a few to demonstrate. We include a wide range of important features of our project to aims for the urban leader in this field. Then what was our approach for stakeholder and stakeholders collaboration or community collaborations? So we adopted, actually after a lot of discussion, we adopted people-centric approach. So what is people-centric approach? It is actually because we identified key stakeholders, then we identified the modes of communication for them, then how we will communicate. There are different groups. There are people with disability, they are transgenders, they are people, illiterate people, they are well-versed people, they are educated, they are politicians. So for each and every group of peoples, we identified mode of engagements there, how we will and who will communicate with them. Then we identify vulnerable group, or in our discussions, we establish monitoring cells in our company to look after their requirements and give them the rights to monitor the things which we were agreed with them and which were part of the planning process. So similarly, then for the bus technologies and all these things, multiple group discussions, workshops, focus group discussions, surveys, multiple modes were adopted to keep in communication with these people to understand their requirement. So our people-centric approach in this whole success worked a lot. Then we come to the integration of this whole thing. I think this part is its own detailed success story. If we just go by discussion with the physical integration, then it did a wonderful job here in Peshawar, because our main dedicated corridors were connected with the off corridor route through physical integration. Then we have a fair integration, operational and information integration. Then the built environment integration, the sidewalks in the landscape in which people move on the sidewalk towards bicycles and bus station. So we consider all those aspects. The bicycle and the bus fare media were integrated in this whole process. Then the important thing and the interesting thing in this whole process, which took a little time also, was the vehicle technology. Actually, when we talk about the success, then it is very important for us to understand the context the prior context with this project also. 40 years plus old buses were operating in the city. There were more than 600 individual operators who are operating here in the Peshawar city. They were all were informal public transports. The taxi were also used as a informal public transport. The buses were 40 years old. So in this whole context, when we talked about the vehicle technology, it was a big challenge for us. Talking about with the people to build to bring a vehicle technology which are more clean was a more challenging. And during this whole process, it took more than 6 months for us to convince the people and the government and all those things that we need this technology. So a detailed round of discussions were arranged for this things. We evaluated the option of diesel buses, we evaluated option of full electric buses, and we discussed the hybrid buses. And after a deliberate discussion and after detailed discussions, we finally come with the vehicle technology. It was a very, like at that time, many people challenged this, that this is a new technology and it will have a lot of backslash and we will not be able to maintain these buses. But with careful drafting of the contracts, we were able to bring a hybrid vehicle technology to Pakistan for the first time. And these buses were plug-in and regenerative, has a plug-in regenerative braking system. So the buses were charged through braking system and also through plug-in system. We procure slow charger and fast charger. The bus is a quality of low fuel consumption and universal accessibility, and for all the latest technology were built in this in the vehicle technology. So, but in this whole process, there was like a wonderful experience for us because of the reason that the people accepted the technology too much. And we can just, to give a simple example, the success of this story, that after the implementation of this project, only in Pakistan, more than 500 diesel hybrid buses were procured by the other cities just to follow us because of our success. Yes, even with the when we procured these buses, there were some challenges also. Buses caught fire initially. The system remained suspended for a month, but our contractual arrangement, the supplier, the manufacturer, all people did well, and we were able to overcome the problem, and we stand out. We stand out, and now other cities in Pakistan are following us. In a very short time, more than 400 hybrid buses are procured following our success, and they procured this technology because it's a clean technology. It is a low fuel consumption. It is a more benefit for the public. It's a low floor buses for the first time. If we discuss each aspect of this technology, I think it would require a lot of time, but just to briefly say that now cities, or at least cities in Pakistan, are following our vehicle technology, or suggestions, or implementation process to procure more buses for the city. Then resilience, this is another important aspect. Again, when we explain this thing, then we need to understand the context of Pakistan also, which are facing climate changes, extreme hot weather, extreme rains. When we say that we need to understand the context, then we see that we need to understand that prior to this BRT system, when there were rains, then there were no public transport system to be operated in the city. When the extreme weather, it was very difficult to move in the city because of the hot weather. And when we talk in all these processes, the most affected people were the vulnerable group, for the females, for the transgender, for the wheelchair person, for person with disabilities. So all those people were more affected by the extreme weather, whether if there is a hot weather, it is a rain. So from the scratch, we included the drainage system, so that when there is rain, or system remains in operation. Efficient lighting make it more energy, less energy consumption for us. The buses were air conditioned so that the passenger feel more comfortable. The design, station design was more comfortable. Then to cater the hot weather, water fountains were provided at each station. Then we are like on the north of the country, and the fuel comes from Karachi. So sometimes it's a fuel strike. So in the depot, we provided additional capacity to keep the system operational during crisis, in the whole, like in pandemics, in turbulent times, our system performed excellently because of the multiple reasons, the resilience that we have planned and designed in this whole process. We operated the system through controlled SOP during COVID-19. We operated the system. There is the city has a strike regarding fuel hikes. Then our system always keep running because the contracts, the operational design, the multiple rules, all those things are integrated in such a way that it provides more resilience and more flexibility to us to operate the system. And then before this system, there were no data. It was very difficult to operate the system on a reliability. So the new system has more data. So just to summarize for my listeners, that this has detailed benefits. Only this resilience, if we talk about this, we have, our project has a lot of aspects, and if we want to understand their effects, it requires a more research work, because it has a ripple effects. These resilience, the technologies, and these all things have a ripple effect for the next upcoming projects, and a very positive lesson learned for the coming project. Then the important aspect is the bus industry restructuring program. What we did actually, we divided the whole process in two things. One was the vehicle, the bus industry profiling. What we did, we did multiple surveys through community collaborations, and we did profiling for what type of vehicles we are available, what are their age, what type of fuel they are using. So we did a profiling for the vehicle which were operated prior to BRT system, and based on those things, we drafted a compensation policy that a bus whose vehicle age is this, then they will get this type of compensation. If bus is this, then they will get this. We allocated separate marks for the documentation. For the physical verification, we allocated separate marks. So we fix a price, and then we have allocation of marks for each category. Then next important thing is impacted employees and owner. So we compensated them. We did a profiling for them also. We have a detailed discussion with them, focus group discussion, surveys. We did their profiling also, that how many are affected employees, what are their percentages, what salary are they getting, what are their expectation from us, what are their skills level. So we did all those profiling, and we made it a part of our a service provider contract for everyone. Employment, we call it employment opportunity program. For each service provider, that they should at least engage 30% of their employee in their system. And yes, knowing the challenges that the new system will be more advanced, the skills that required in the new technology is not available with the current set. So we make it mandatory for in their contracts that they provide them the opportunity for training, so that they can learn the new technology and have a capacity building for them with the passage of time. Then the employees were divided in the drivers category, conductors, mechanics. We offered them a choice to have a priority of the job that they want with the new service provider. So they have the option to opt it for drivers, for a contractor, mechanics, janitorial, and then we give them opportunities. For the owners, we give them a compensation for a business loss of 1 year. So all these things were integrated in our contracts. Then we finally comes when we did profiling for the employees and for the owner. Then the final process was the bus scrapping process. So the government established a scrutiny and physical verification committee who was responsible for the scrapping, enlistment and scrapping of all these vehicles, and to listen to their grievances and their complaints and their suggestions. And then payments were made to these operators within a stipulated time to all these affected owners, and with compensation loss. Then we hired another service provider contractor. We collected the buses from the existing bus operators. We handed over them, and we defined a set of a principle also, that you have to cut the whole bus in 3 parts, the engine and all these things, and you have to make a record of video records and photographs and all these things for onward audit. So this whole process make such a example for us, and such a wonderful thing, that we without a single strike, even without a single complaint, we were able to scrape 500 vehicles which has age of more than 30 years plus. Some were have even 40 years plus. So with a smooth transition and in this whole process, we keep them engaged in our process. It's not like this that we did a less, even when we get the enlistment of employees and we get the list of vehicle owner, we make it published on our website also, so that all knows that whose vehicles are listed and whose employees has been accommodated in the list, so that if they have any grievance or any complaint, so they can formally complain or send application to scrutiny and physical verification committee. So just to conclude on this topic, that it was such a good experience, dealing 600 individual operators, and most of them who are illiterate, and dealing with them was like through a collaboration process and transparency and awareness of the system. So it make like such a good example for us that we smoothly included the affected employees in our system and scraped the vehicle which were which were creating environmental pollution since last more than 30 years. Network design and route planning. This is some more technical aspects of the project, which has like if we go in more detail, then in overall success, this has its own significance. But we had buses initially 128. We were able to operate the whole system at once, but we did not do it like this. We did it slowly. So we started with a trunk operator, then we added direct routes, then we added express routes to the system, and the new routes were planned based on the automated fare collection data. Then all these routes were integrated with each other through physical integration, which make it convenient for passengers to transfer from one route to other route at station. The bicycle stations were connected with the station to provide a last mile connectivity. And just the last but not the least, we provided the new routes in such a way that it competes with the private cars. And like we utilize the dedicated corridor because we have already like 27 kilometers. So for direct routes, we get the benefits of efficient utilization of corridors, and we were able to get passengers from private cars. And now recently a survey has been conducted which shows that we are in the city, BRT routes are operating either on the main corridor or on off corridor. The composition of rickshaws, taxis, and for public transport is reduced significantly in the city as compared to other part of the city where no BRT is currently operating. So it is like a great success for us, and the network design and route planning play a significant role in this journey toward gold standard. Marketing and branding, we keep our public informed about all our actions during the whole implementation process. We utilize bicycle kiosk digital screen, we utilize station digital screen, we utilize bus digital screen. So in this whole process, taking the peoples from informal public transport from a system which is not universal accessible system to universal accessible system, awareness keep a big role in this overall process also. So we did the public informed about this. So marketing and branding has their role, which cannot be denied in this journey to gold standard. We sold out 1.2 million cards in a population of 2 million cards. So we can say that almost 60 or 70% public of the city of Peshawar or a potential rider. So the experience that we increase the female riderships from 2% to 20%, universal accessible for the hearing impaired peoples, for the person with the wheelchair passenger. So the system, we made the system overall universally accessible. When we talk about all these things, then the ridership trends summarize our success. If we see from August 2020 till February or March currently we are planning, there is a continuous increase in the ridership. That speaks out about the success of the projects. And just to tell another aspect, that even now this trend is not stopping. We are continuously getting induced demand, and we are making our ridership more and more by day because of the feature that we have included in this project. just to add some few things, that we not only limited to some technical thing, we worked on urban environment also. We provided, we did some beautification of the city. We provide new infrastructure, sidewalks in the projects. Then we did a standardization of advertisement business in the city. Some beautiful picture. Then finally, the lesson learned. From the bus technology, we said that we should not be worried of the innovations. It is a challenge, of course, it is a challenge, but we should take opportunity to work on innovation and do some innovation, because innovation brings change in for the greater economic, social, and environmental benefits. Then during the whole process, it is very important that there is a decision-making process, role and responsibility clearly defined. If this is not defined, then it delayed the project. Then there are interface issues between the IT technologies and the civil works. At some time, get the project delayed. So prior to whole implementation process, you need to define the interface arrangement. Then you need to hire the right people. If you have the right people, your problem will be continuously less. Planning is the main aspect. The more time you give to the planning process, the less problem you will have during implementation process. During the implementation process, you need to manage the risk, you maintain a risk registered, and keep following for those things. Then the supply and O&M contracts of the mechanical and electrical equipment should be built in the same contract, so that during implementation process you have very less problem. There should be, since it's a bus-based technology, so we should have more turnaround in the corridor, so that we have more flexibility in the system. Thank you very much. I hope you people have enjoyed the presentation.
Great. Thank you both, Imran and Fayez, for this very thorough and insightful presentation. So at this point, I would like to bring back Emma to moderate a very short discussion, incorporating some questions from the audience. And I think we have about 10 minutes for that.
Yeah, first of all, that was brilliant. Thank you both for such a wonderful presentation. I think there's so much richness and everything that you presented that it's hard to, and you can see that also by the quantity of questions that are being asked, that we have a lot to get to. I think what I'd like to just kind of start with, though, is a little bit of a reflection, and just saying that I think from the scope of what you presented, it's really obvious to be seen that, and this is something that in the Tartu, which was the other 2022 honorable mention Sustainable Transport Award, honorable mention, mentioned in their presentation, which is transportation is social science. And I think what you're seeing with the project of Trans-Peshawar and all the integration and all the, from fair to social to built environment, is that transportation is more than just infrastructure. It's really an art of transformation. And I think the BRT that you all have done is that it's a transformation of the urban environment. It's a transportation of people's lives and increasing access. It's just the transformation of the bus industry, like or the public transport industry. So I just think it's amazing to see the scale and the breadth of the work that you took on when you think of, when you could think that it's just a simple transportation project. So to begin with, I'm going to bundle some questions from what we had discussed and versus what I'm seeing in the chat. And there's going to be 3 big questions. I'm just going to queue them up. One is going to be around social access and inclusion. One is going to be on kind of operational design. And then one is going to be on the bus industry restructuring. So we'll start off with the social inclusion. I think it's interesting how you centered, and you talked about this being people-centric, but how you centered social inclusion and access for women, for people with disabilities, for elderly, for young people, for children, all into this. So if you could talk a little bit about why that was important to you, and then how did you, Bethel asks a question about how did you actually involve stakeholders, like what were the means of bringing people into the planning process? What were some, Heather Allen asks, what were some of the specific features for people with disabilities and the infrastructure of vehicles and operations? And Saeed asks about some of the safety features. So that's a bunch of questions for you.
So thanks, Amy. I think I will start. So basically, like the social inclusion and accessibility, and this is basically the key strength of our system and the key success of our system. And how this started, when initially the buses were running, so we had a survey of the initial, like the current, prior to the BRT informal buses, and we looked at the female ridership was at 2%. Basically negligible, and those were also like the females who had no other option, like they did not could not afford taxi, they did not have access to the cars, and that was by force. They were like did not want to use the transport, but by force they were like they had no other choice. Similarly, the disabled people, I have briefly touched on that. It was impossible for them to access the public transport, and similarly the children, it was a challenging for them. So right from the onset, we did not neglect these, because we knew from the start that the people who are using the old industry, the buses, when we provide them with a better technology, with better buses, air condition, a good system, they will come to us. So our ride from the onset, our focus was to attract the females, attract the disabled, and that did not come just by planning or just on the papers to design it. So I will give you some example. For example, when we made the first the bus, we bring the bus to Peshawar. So we invited the females and we asked them like what is their input. So those were like very small things that we made changes, but it made a lot of impact. Like one of the input was the hand grab. We put at the same height for the females and the male at the same height. So they wanted it to be a more lower. Then some of the seating were a little bit, the direction of the seating need to be changed for the females. So we did that. Then for the disabled groups, for example, the disabled, we are operating the buses both on the on corridor and the off corridor. So on the off corridor, when we tested the ramp, so the ramp had a small hinge that was basically connected in a manner that it was creating a small hindrance when the wheelchair was accessing the bus. So just like making that hinge upside down, we provided them a flat surface. Then just the seat belt, like the seat belt for the wheelchair, the seat belt was like basically made in China based on those wheelchairs. Here, wheelchairs were a little bit wider, so those seat belts were a little bit difficult for the wheelchair users. So they wanted a little bit longer seat belt. So like changes like that. And then when we, during the construction process, for example, when we made the first bus station, so we invited the people, the disability local groups, that they should come and they see like how changes we can make to improve the system. So it was not just the planning, but actually testing the system with them throughout the process, and even right now in the operations, because it's never an end. Like sky is the limit. We is a continuous improvement like process, and we are open to that, and we continuously change and improve. Similarly for the females, like our most latest thing for the female is there is a quick response force, and that force was just males, so they respond to the different issues. There is security everywhere, but the QRF, like the quick response force, is supposed to go to some incident. So based on the female demand, they thought that if there is a female quick response force, it will also help them. So when we created the quick response force of the females, and then like basically in all this process, we had a guiding document of the gender action plan, where we set targets, and quarterly, like we are sending to our donor banks like the Asian Development Bank, AFD. And then we, like I myself as a CEO, I monitor the gap, every aspect of it, and with the top management of the ADB, AFD. So we, every quarter, we review those, and we continuously make changes and improvement. So, and the success we can see now, like from 2%, it's now well over 20%, and the demand for the female is growing. The children who could never use the system, in the morning, it's an amazing scene. If you come to the system, you will see like literally 4-year, 5-year-old without their parents, they come to our system, they use our system independently. Similarly, the wheelchairs and all the elderly people, the vulnerable. So, so I think like little efforts someone has to make to these groups, which are always like neglected, especially in the areas like Pakistan and third world countries. They do not pay attention. So, but it pay out, like it will pay you out. It is very important that try to make the system for all. I think about like 20% is female, about 10% is the small children. And similarly, like there are around 5,000 disabled people who use our system. So it's a great success for us that we included them, and we are continuously making changes as we go. We listen to them, and we will try to make it more comfortable for these people.
Yeah, that's amazing. Ivana put in, Imran, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything.
Yes, actually, when I talk about the people-centric approach, what we did actually in the city, there are already groups which are fighting for their rights or demanding their rights for the females, for the vulnerable groups. So in the people-centric approach, we approach those organizations, the peoples with the disability, 3 organizations working here, then there is a 3-4 organizations which are working for women rights. So in the people-centric approach, we approach them to be in the part of our discussion, in the focus discussion, and through their discussion and suggestion, we make the vulnerable groups from dependent to independent in the system.
Great. So I know we are at time, but I want to ask one more question, and it's just a closing question for you all. I'm sorry we ran out of time. It's really, again, a rich discussion. I do want to just refer to what Ivana put in the chat. The mode share of 2% of public transport users were women before Trans-Peshawar, and now it's at 20%. And then Fayaz, when you were saying 5,000 people with disabilities are now using the systems, this is, again, transformative for people to be able to access the services and the employment opportunities and the educational opportunities, and young children at 10%. Like, the amount of access that this has increased, I think is extraordinary. And I also think it's extraordinary that you're also trying to center transgender people as a marginalized group in your system as well. But to close, you can talk about anything you want, but I wanted to give you guys one last chance to say something or respond to any of the questions. I do think it would be nice if you could maybe talk about the thing that you find the most gratifying about the project that you've done, or the thing you found most surprising about implementing this project. This is kind of like takeaway for people from the webinar. So I'll hand to you, Fayaz.
So I think for the takeaway, like something that I want to encourage people is basically like 2 things. One is hire the right people. And that is very important to begin with. Right, for the Peshawar BRT, when we started, there was no policy, there was no laws, there was no act, and there was no department. Then they created Trans-Peshawar, and the key success of Trans-Peshawar is basically we hired the right people, and those people they have the knowledge, and they work without any pressure, without any interventions. And then the other important thing is innovations. Like, it's very scary, especially in the context of Pakistan, because of the different agencies. These higher profile projects are being challenged by every agency. So innovations, and there is always, because if you want to change, if you want to do different, you have to take a calculated risk and undertake innovations and adopt innovations. And there is always, like, you have to manage the risks, and we have managed those. Like, we have the first bicycle sharing system in Pakistan, first diesel hybrid bus technology, first time in Pakistan the mobile application, the first time in Pakistan the bus industry restructuring program. So initially when we started, everyone was like, there was a lot of hesitancy, but we managed the risk, we adopted innovations, and this is the way for success. Because status quo is not, it will be just a BRT system moving buses from one end to the other. But if you want to transform, if you want to make an impact, a positive impact, so I think innovations is the key, that you have to take the risk, manage the risk, and do innovations.
I would like to add some few things that from the planning process, we need to set the goals for the project, that what type of the system we are going to achieve. And then during the implementation process, we remain to stick with those standards that we, at any cost, we have to achieve those objectives. The second important thing that we need to include all vulnerable groups, especially the more are vulnerable group in the system, the more confidence will be even from the other people also. So one should consider stakeholder participation a key factor in the success. This is the second. Third, while designing the system and drafting the contracts, need to consider about that how the system will operate in turbulent times, how it will operate in the crisis time. If a system is unable to operate in turbulent time, if the system is difficult to provide resilience, difficult to provide in the extreme hot and weather, then the system is we cannot say it will give the wider economic, social, and environmental benefit. So we need to consider this in the overall process, that the system should be able to operate operate in turbulent times, because the most vulnerable people in these times are the vulnerable groups, which are females, which are transgender, which are people with disability, with our children. So these are the important three things that I want that the listener should consider in their future projects. Thank you.
Those were both, all of them, both were amazing. I just to reiterate, I think this idea of hiring the right people is really crucial. And the mismanagement, especially when, as you were saying, Faiz, like all of the things that you're doing when new technology, new systems, like everything is new institutions. So like, I think this idea of risk management and embracing innovation, but also managing the risk that comes with it is a really important point. And I think, Imran, the idea of setting goals and using that as like the North Star for the project, I think is a really important point. I think the bringing in stakeholder integration is key, but not only for making sure it's a good system for them, but for the point that you concluded on, which is resilience in the time of turbulence and crisis. And as we're seeing, that's maybe our new normal, is to constantly be responding to extreme weather events, extreme heat, and who knows what other crises come. So this was amazing. I feel very inspired. I've learned a lot. I'm very thankful that you all came and talked about your lessons learned and your process of implementation. I think there's a lot of interest in learning more. So maybe if there's planning documents, or especially around the bus industry transition, I think there's a lot of questions around that. Maybe we can see if you can share some of your planning documents, or your if you have anything to share along that with the people who participated. And with that, I'll pass it to Ivana. But thank you so much. It was amazing.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you
all. Thank you, of course, today's moderator and the panelists, Imran and Fayez, for the wonderful presentations, and of course our attendees today. So we run out of time. Thank you so much for sticking around. We have more events planned in the Mobilize virtual series in the forthcoming months, which include a keynote and a technical webinar from the STA 2022 winning city, Bogota, Colombia. There will be also a deep dive session, so please stay tuned. Visit ITDP's social media and the events page to be up to date. And with that, again, thank you so much for this wonderful session, and see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care all.